After humiliating one of the most feared casino bosses in the city and walking away with millions, Jake Green gets informed that he has only 3 days left to live due to a serious medical illness. To make it worse, he becomes the most wanted man in the criminal underworld. Assassins are sent after him again and again, and a person named Sam Gold, who doesn't even exist, named, wants him dead. The only thing that keeps him going is the one formula he learned during his 7 years in prison. Back in prison, the gangster Jake is kept in solitary confinement for some crime no one knows about. His time alone makes him a patient of claustrophobia, and now any closed chambers like elevators are his natural enemies. After he completes his 7 years of prison sentences, on a rainy day, Jake is finally released. Outside a casino, the owner Dorothy Macha confirms from his right-hand man, French Paul, that he has made sure that their shareholder Jake would never rise up again. 2 years pass, and Jake is going to the casino with his brother Billy. Billy has second thoughts on this, but Jake is motivated to make Macha pay compensation, since he was the one whose job got Jake locked up in prison. As they arrive at the casino, the guard at the door informs the management so they can make sure Jake and his brother do not get a table here. When Macha learns about their arrival, he quickly orders Paul to invite them up to the private area of the casino. As Jake is escorted toward the elevator, he learns he has to go to the 20th floor, and he wants to take the stairs instead. Jake somehow convinces himself to step into the elevator. However, the 2 minutes he spends inside make him instantly regret that choice. When he reaches the private area, the owner Macha tells him to sit down and remarks on how successful he has become in just 2 years. Macha claims that from what he has heard, Jake wants to own a business like his, but he intends to show him his real place and says that he can never be more than an employee who will always need a master. Jake ignores the threats from his former mafia boss and places a fortune on a chip toss with Raid, which he ends up losing. He makes Macha think that he is as foolish as someone can be, and then he places the same bet with him. This time he wins big and walks away with a huge amount of money. As he is about to leave, Paul appears and asks him to return to the table, but Jake and his brother refuse. While they are about to exit the casino, a chubby-faced man hands Jake a card and tells him that he is in serious trouble and that he can help him get out of it. This time, Jake's claustrophobia pushes him to take the stairs instead. There he looks at the card, which tells him to take the elevator. Jake suddenly faints and falls down the stairs, after which he is rushed to the hospital. Meanwhile, Macha tells Paul that Jake is nothing but a red flag. He reminds him that the man has spent 7 years in a cell and brings up an incident involving his sister-in-law, then tells Paul to have him murdered. Later at the hospital, the doctors inform Jake that they have found no clear reason for why he blacked out, but they have taken blood samples and the results will be ready in a few hours. Jake goes home and leaves Billy behind to handle some chores. When he reaches his place, he finds another card lying at his doorstep that tells him to pick it up. As Jake bends down to grab it, several bullets fly past him and instantly kill the 2 men escorting him. It becomes clear that Macha's assassin has already been waiting there. Jake tries to wake Joe but realizes he is dead from the gunshot. He quickly gets into his car with the driver, but before the car can move, the driver too is shot dead. As the gunfire continues without pause, the mysterious cardman named Zach appears again. He immediately drives Jake away while, at the same time, Macha receives news that Sorter, the man who never misses a shot, has missed 3 times in a row. Sorter argues with the man standing next to him and says that someone must have warned Jake, otherwise there is no way he could have escaped. Meanwhile, Zach takes Jake to his place and introduces him to the receptionist Doreen and his partner Avi. When Avi starts speaking in a roundabout way, Jake coldly tells him to get straight to the point. Avi shows the guy his results from the hospital, letting him know that he is going to die in 3 days because of some blood-borne disease. Jake shows no interest and is about to leave when the two offer him a non-negotiable deal. They laid down their conditions that Jake would have to give them all of his money and do whatever he is asked to in return for receiving a lifetime protection subscription from Macha. Avi tells him he can get a second opinion if he wants, but warns him that he has no more than 3 hours to make a decision. Jake treats the homemade hospital results as a bluff and goes to a private doctor who confirms the harsh news that he has a rare blood disease. Jake pulls a gun on the doctor and tries to force him to admit he was paid to fake the results, but he realizes that the diagnosis is real and that he is indeed doomed. With no other option left, Jake begins gathering his money. At the same time, Sorter is questioned by Macha about how he managed to miss 3 times in a row when he has never missed a target before. After getting threatened, Sorter assures his boss that he will never miss his target again. Back at the pool house, Jake returns with the cash and accepts the duo's conditions. They tell him to drive their car, and during the ride they explain that the money they have taken from him will be used in their lending business, making it clear that they are loan sharks. They later bring him to meet a client named Horowitz, who shares a sad story in an attempt to gain sympathy and secure a loan. The loan shark duo calmly reminds Mr. Horowitz of their rules, and then signals Jake to hand over the bag containing Jake's hard-earned money. On their way back, Jake is asked about his history with Macha, and he ends up telling them everything. He begins by explaining that Macha has 3 men called Eddies who work under him. One time, when Matcha lost a trump card, he told Jake to take his place in the game. As any normal person would, Jake refused at first, but Matcha began targeting his family, including his niece. Because of that pressure, he had no choice but to agree, and he even won the game for Matcha. However, during that same game, a man named George starts mocking him and pushes it too far, which sets off his anger. Jake fires a shot at the man's feet, and the situation quickly turns into a full gunfight. Later, someone gives Jake's name to the authorities, but he stays silent because they threaten his family again and end up killing his brother's wife in the process. After meeting one more client, the loan sharks drop Jake off at a place where he can spend the night. That same night, Matcha goes to meet a man named Sam Gold. He waits there for an hour until Paul arrives and tells him that no one gets to see Gold directly, and instead, they will be meeting one of his representatives named Lily Walker. Just then, Gold's representative arrives, and Matcha quickly steps forward to greet her. Lily takes him aside for a walk so they can go over the terms and conditions of their deal. She finalizes the cocaine powder agreement with him, but warns that her boss does not appreciate any kind of publicity, and she makes it clear that delays or second chances are completely non-negotiable. The next day, when Jake brings another bag of his money to the loan sharks, they tell him to explain everything about his time in jail. Jake reluctantly begins to describe how he had to choose between 14 years in regular prison or 7 years in solitary confinement, and he chose the latter. During his time there, Jake is placed between two neighbors in the adjacent cells. One of them is a chess expert, and the other is a skilled con man. They have both been there for more than 10 long years, and even though they have never seen each other, they know so much about one another, more than most married couples would do. Jake continues by explaining that the two of them wrote down their chess moves and con strategies inside books on quantum mechanics and astrophysics, which serve as their only way of communicating. From those two neighbors, Jake learns about a particular strategy called the formula, which is said to be so powerful that it can help its user win every game. Even though Jake does not fully understand the formula, the two neighbors remain confident that it works. In the end, it is time for them to leave, and they promise Jake that they will take him with them. But one day, they suddenly disappear, and Jake is left out to rot for the remaining 2 years of his sentence alone. When Jake is finally released, he discovers that all his belongings and money have been taken by the two clever men, since he had trusted them and shared everything with them. The only thing they leave him with is the formula, which Jake begins to use to win in every casino he enters, until the gambling houses start fearing him and he gets blacklisted from most places. The loan sharks then begin using Jake to handle their work for them. When Jake is sent to an old lady's house to collect a large loan, he calls Zach and asks how such an old, almost frail woman could possibly arrange that kind of money. Zach tells Jake to bring back all her belongings, including the dog. Jake refuses, arguing that she has nothing but a TV that doesn't work and that he is not taking her dog. When Jake returns from visiting Horowitz without bringing anything back, Avi mocks him, saying they did not send him there just to polish the doorknobs and come back empty-handed. Jake then joins the loan shark duo as they rob a vault full of cocaine from Matcha's casino, which Matcha was supposed to deliver to Gold. Matcha panics when he discovers what has happened, but Paul has no explanation for this. With no other options, Paul goes to Matcha's rival, Lord John, to get the powder, since only he could provide it on such short notice. Paul offers twice the price, but John insults him and refuses to make a deal with his enemy. Next, the loan sharks together with Jake rob Lord John for millions of dollars while framing Matcha for the crime. Surprisingly, the robbery scenes are displayed in a cartoon animation in the room of a man named Lou. Back at their place, Avi asks Jake how he keeps winning. Jake explains his method, saying that the trick is to make his opponent believe he is smarter while he appears dumber. The more control the opponent thinks he has, the less he actually does. He then lays out his rules, one of which says that he can only become stronger by playing against stronger opponents. Jake defeats Avi in a chess match, and Avi tells him that he will never play with him again. Zach confesses to Jake that he has even more tricks up his sleeve than a clown would.
You got more tricks than a clown's pocket.
You will always find a good opponent in the very last place you would ever look.
Later, Jake receives a call from his brother, warning him to get out while he can, since the loan shark duo has interfered in Gold's business and no one escapes this infamous man without paying a hefty price. When Jake returns to the loan sharks, they hand him a gun and tell him to shoot a man named Fred in the knee for missing his installments, but Jake refuses. Avi tries to convince him to trust them. When he forces Jake, Jake points the gun at Avi instead, but just as he pulls the trigger, Zach mocks him by saying good morning, revealing that the gun has no bullets and that their demand was just a bluff or a test for loyalty. Jake is punched and left unconscious. Later, he wakes up screaming after receiving a call congratulating him on surviving past the 3 days when he was supposedly going to die and telling him he should get himself checked. As the scene shifts, Jake's brother and niece arrive to check on him. When Jake visits the private doctor he had threatened before, the doctor humbly apologizes for the previous unexplained error. He explains that Jake still has an illness, but he is definitely not going to die, and all the pain Jake endured flashes through his mind. mind. Just as he steps outside, Jake imagines being hit by a car and smashed through the windshield. The vision reverses, and he realizes he survives a close call.
We wouldn't do this.
He immediately calls the loan sharks, demanding to know why he is still alive and drained from everything. Avi cuts the call, saying he will find out very soon. Meanwhile, Matcha learns from Patrick and Paul that Jake is definitely plotting against him. He instructs them to send Slim Biggins along with Sorter to deal with Jake once and for all. At the same time, Jake arrives at the loan sharks' place, where they are taking a bath. As usual, they play a game of words, keeping it unclear why they are outside rather than relaxing inside. Their plan becomes clear when Matcha's henchmen chase Jake into Avi and Zach's house. During the pursuit, one of the hitmen falls onto a shotgun and dies. The gangsters misinterpret the accident and stop chasing Jake, believing he was skilled enough to take the man out with a single shot. Later, at his restaurant, Matcha scolds and mocks his men for losing to a single Jake, even though they had both experience and numerical advantage. At the same place, Lord John has sent a hitwoman disguised as a waitress to kill Matcha. Sorter shoots at her but only wounds her, causing her to fall to the ground instead of finishing her. He then goes outside and takes out the hitwoman's getaway driver as he tries to flee in a car. Inside, Matcha, being pushed to the ground by his men, struggles with the hitwoman under the tables as she continues shooting at him. During the chaos, she shoots off his finger under the table while no one above realizes what has happened. In a desperate survival attempt, Matcha empties his bodyguard's pistol into the assassin, finally killing her and saving himself. When his men notice something is wrong, Matcha finally manages to get up and shouts at them that he has been shot in the finger. Matcha immediately rushes outside and learns from Sorter that this attack was all Lord John's doing. Enraged, Matcha sends Sorter after John. At the same time, he orders Paul and his henchmen to interrogate members of John's triad to find the location of the stolen cocaine. As the story continues, Sorter has already infiltrated the CCTV room at Lord John's place. He drills a hole in the wall, locks the CCTV operator in, and shoots him dead. Meanwhile, Jake meets Avi and Zach on a rooftop. They reveal to him the truth about this so-called Mr. Gold. Avi explains that Gold is not a real person, but exists only in Jake's mind.
He's all up here, pretending to be you.
Jake struggles to accept that he has been manipulated by someone who exists only in his head. Even though he already has the answers, he refuses to believe it, realizing in the end that he never mentally left the prison. The men tell Jake that by taking away the physical embodiment of his ego, which is his money, they have freed him from Gold's game. That night, Jake breaks into the penthouse where Matcha, his real enemy, is sleeping. Surprisingly, instead of taking the chance to shoot him, he asks the practically naked dude for forgiveness. He bends down and struggles in his own mind over why he is doing this instead of simply shooting. He confesses to Matcha, who is still in shock, that he made a mistake and, as a way to make amends, has donated in his name, all while continuing to fight with himself internally. Jake then leaves in the elevator, confronting his fear of confined spaces, but it stops at the 13th floor. Matcha grabs his handgun and rushes down the stairs to meet Jake on the ground floor. While stuck in the elevator, Jake argues with his own mind and finally rejects his ego, which Avi had described as Mr. Gold. He continues to struggle with the thoughts in his head. By doing this, Jake finally steps off the chessboard he was on all along, forcing himself to go against everything his ego tells him to do.
Wick without me. Wick. It's us against them, Jake.
He ultimately makes the ego, which has long kept him on the trigger, release the gun. At this moment, he fully grasps the truest and most fundamental application of the formula he learned back in the cell. Just then, the elevator starts working again, but when the doors open to the ground floor, almost naked Matcha is standing there, pointing his gun towards Jake, who has now been enlightened and released from his ego and greed. Matcha threatens him, demanding to know his game. Jake, who is now calm as heaven, leaves Matcha a crying, pathetic mess, weeping while literally begging him to fear him. Jake has rejected the ego, whereas Matcha has been seen to be consumed by it as he continues to shiver and lets Jake leave. The next day, just as Matcha was told by Jake, he learns from Paul that a huge sum of money was donated to a children's charity in his name. Matcha gladly takes the credit, believing it will improve his reputation. When Paul says that he has news about Jake, Matcha boasts that Jake had finally learned that he, Matcha, is the true boss in the game and had already come to beg for his forgiveness. Paul, however, denies his claims and argues that while he was peacefully sleeping, his men were busy figuring out things for him and had found out that Jake is the one behind the powder and not Lord John. He argues that they have been played upon, which leads Matcha to become mad as he shouts at Paul to shut up. He then orders his men to go after Jake and recover the powder. Elsewhere, in an attempt to settle a debt with Matcha, Jake's brother Billy is betrayed by his bodyguard, who allows Sorter and Paul into Billy's home. Billy quickly tells his daughter to hide in a cupboard and then calmly sits down, knowing he has been checkmated. Paul tortures Billy, threatens to kidnap his daughter, and threatens to set him on fire to learn Jake's whereabouts, but Billy insists that he has no idea where his brother is. Back at Matcha's place, Lily visits and tells him that Gold is furious about Matcha's recent publicity and his repeated delays in the deal. She points out that if he had the time to become famous, he should definitely have had the time to complete their powder deal. Matcha pleads for more time to settle things, but Walker leaves with a mysterious threat. Matcha shouts at her to send Gold himself if he has the guts to come, while she quietly departs. At that moment, Matcha, like Jake before him, begins to struggle with his thoughts and realizes that he has messed up big time. Therefore, he rushes to beg the woman for forgiveness. As the story returns, Paul's violent acts unsettle Sorter, which plays with his conscience and judgment. He rejects his ego by killing Paul and all his companions to save Billy's girl. Lou informs Matcha of what has just happened and he finds it unbelievable. Sorter is then finished off by Matcha's last remaining henchman and the girl is kidnapped. This time, when Jake plays a chess match against Avi, he rewinds everything in his memories. Even though he never saw the mysterious neighbors during his time in the cell, he finally realizes that those two were actually Avi and Zach. He complains to them about not taking him along back then, and Zach replies that Jake simply wasn't ready. Jake finds out about his niece's kidnapping, and Avi tells him to return Matcha's powder to him. When he arrives, Matcha points a gun at Jake's niece, Rachel, but Jake shows no fear. Matcha finds himself humiliated and fights with his ego just like Jake has all this time. He then says that Jake cannot kill an already dead man. He wants to shoot himself instead of letting Jake kill him. The story finally comes to a close as Matcha puts the gun to his head and pulls the trigger.